Welcome to the Matt Stone Show, where we help managers become leaders through the power of human connection. We talk with thought leaders, experts, and fellow travelers about the stories and behaviors that will accelerate you toward your true leadership potential. And welcome back to the newly relaunched Matt Stone Show. Really excited about this new chapter. And today, I'm talking with emotional intelligence executive coach Jamelle Lindo about the role of EQ in accelerating your leadership journey. Now, EQ means emotional intelligence, and it's useful for managing your relationship with yourself and with others. So if you're a manager, there's just simply nothing more important. You're already impacted by it, whether you realize it or not. EQ is indispensable for new and seasoned managers alike who want to get great results, lower their stress, and have more fun along the way. Jamelle talks about his own journey to discovering EQ and shares some stories and relatable challenges that I think if you're a manager, you will definitely connect with. So stay tuned to the end because Jamelle shares some practical things that you can do right now without any cost or any help from anyone else to up your EQ game and progress toward your potential as a successful human-centered leader. You know, in this time of rapid transformation, we humans are going to need to invest even more in interpersonal skills and humanity. EQ is a critical tool in helping us connect, adapt, and create our way to a better today and tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Check it out. Jamelle is an emotional intelligence executive coach. He's also an international keynote speaker with over 15 years of diverse learning and development experience in the corporate space. He's worked with thousands of professionals across the globe to help them level up through the practical application of emotional intelligence. Jamelle is an official member of the Forbes Coaches Council, which is an invite-only organization for successful business coaches. And he's published various thought leadership articles on Forbes.com and elsewhere. Jamelle's driven by his belief that workplaces are fertile grounds for cultivating human potential and excellence, and that emotionally intelligent leadership is the water that grows greatness in people. And I certainly could not agree more. So that's Jamelle. Couldn't think of a better person to talk to. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know with you and me, it's going to be an absolutely great time. So thank you.
So as we get started, give us a little bit more off the cuff introduction. And in particular, why did you get into the EQ business in the first place?
There's so much there, Matt. So let's start with I do, because I think sometimes this idea of emotional intelligence can be a little bit confusing. It can be a little bit pie in the sky. So I like to bring it down and ground it a little bit. So what is emotional intelligence? Basically, it's people skills. You're a person, I'm a person. How do we deal with and manage that day to day? If we get a little bit more specific, it's a host of skills that refer to how we deal with and manage ourselves and our relationships. These are skills like assertiveness, empathy, stress tolerance, self-awareness and impulse control, flexibility. The list goes on. And I say skill because these are things that we can actually build and cultivate. It's not a personality trait. Think of it more like learning a new language. Think of it more like learning how to play a new instrument. These are things that we can actually get better at. So what do I do and how do I come into all of this? So I'm an emotional intelligence executive coach, as you mentioned, and I help people develop and build these skills. I normally will work with organizations in one of three ways, sometimes two of the three, sometimes all three. But number one is through keynote presentations. So that's me coming in to say, here's what emotional intelligence is, here's why it matters, and here's what we can actually do to start that journey, the 60-minute session. I also do workshops, which is the same thing, but a little bit longer for smaller groups, more intimate. We get into role plays, case studies, etc. And then the last and maybe even most exciting way that I work with leaders is through EQ coaching. And we start with assessing their EQ using an emotional intelligence assessment tool. And then I'll meet with them for 60 minutes twice a month for either a 6 or 12 month in to help them really hone in and grow one or two areas tops in emotional intelligence. Now, you asked me another question, which is going to take me down an entirely different path, which is, why did you get into this? And a lot of people ask me that, but I want to pause first to think and make sure that I've clarified what I do before I go down that path.
I'm curious. You said in your bio, it's like over 15 years and you're a young man. So like you were really young when you started this. And I'm wondering what things surprised you about EQ.
Well, I started EQ development in the womb, and I got a nice head start, right? People do the numbers and they look at my face, they're like, this doesn't make any sense. So I started really young in the womb. So for me, I didn't start with the intention to do.
Let's zero in on some of the things that a new manager is maybe having to do for the first time, or they've done it before, but not in this role, which is different. Now they're above people that maybe they were equal to in terms of the hierarchy before. So now they're like, my friend is now my direct report, right? That's mentally how it goes. And now I'm sandwiched between my boss and the people who report to me. So thinking about some of the scenarios that are very common in that situation. For the first time, I'm needing to manage up and manage down, right? Tell me about that. So it's different, right? I can't tell everybody who is below me in the hierarchy. I don't mean in value as a human being, but in terms of the hierarchy, they're below me in the chart. I can't tell them everything now. There's certain things I actually have to keep confidential, for example, sensitive HR information, things like that. And that can be a really uncomfortable place to be. And then going up, managing up, I've got my boss to deal with. So help us like land the plane on these different scenarios, starting with that one, managing up versus managing down and EQ. How is EQ, the practice of EQ and development of EQ, how is that going to help me do that better?
Let's really ground this. Let's start with managing down. So now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you have all of these direct reports, some of which might have been really close friends of yours. Your responsibility now shifts because you're responsible for their performance. And it can be challenging because sometimes what you realize in those moments is that these people are great friends, but actually terrible employees. What does that mean? Well, it means, number one, you've really got to learn how to deliver tough feedback to everyone, including those who used to be friends of yours. So if you're observing a behavior or you have a KPI, key performance indicator that needs to shift, you now need to deliver that message in an effective way so that it can be received and the behavior or the performance can be changed. A key EQ skill in making that happen is assertiveness. Assertiveness deals with your ability to be able to say what needs to be said, deliver the tough and challenging message, oftentimes tough and challenging message, but to do it in a constructive instead of destructive way, and to be clear and direct without being aggressive. That's what assertiveness is. And so we have to have that skill if we want to be able to deliver feedback that truly makes a positive difference. That's just one example. We also need in those moments empathy to be able to understand the view and perspective of that person. What is causing the behavior? What is their drive? What is their thought? What is their feeling? What is their position? What is their orientation? What is their feeling about the organization? What is their feeling about how the organization views and cares about them as an employee? And how might that be informing the way that they show up? And the way that we do that is by asking questions to develop our understanding. Now, notice I use the word develop, because if I ask one question and somebody gives me one answer, it doesn't mean that I know what they mean. I have to ask follow-up questions and keep asking those questions until I fill in that picture of their experience. That's a skill. We call that empathy. When we do that well, we start to build deeper and more meaningful relationships, which is another EQ skill, interpersonal relationships. So that's just naming a few, but that touches a little bit on the situation around managing downward or how EQ skills relate to our direct reports. And by the way, the last thing that I'll add on that is when we do those things well, empathy, assertiveness, interpersonal relationships, we develop trust. And when we have trust, that's the foundation for performance and really high performing teams. Now let's talk about managing upward. That's a little bit more challenging, right? Because there are all of these politics and concerns about what might happen if you rub that person the wrong way, etc. So there needs to be a kind of awareness, social awareness. There needs to be a kind of sensitivity, but there also needs to be a kind of clarity and directness. We need to be able to bring our concerns forward. We need to be able to share our challenges. We need to be able to ask for support when we need it. We need to be able to ask questions when we legitimately don't have the answer. And so all of these things that I'm talking about fall into these different categories of emotional intelligence. We need to make sure also that we're conducting ourselves in a professional way and that we're not rubbing that person the wrong way. That requires a certain kind of emotional self-awareness. It requires a certain kind of impulse control. Maybe something has happened in the organization that is upsetting to us, and we want to bring it to the attention of our leader. How we do that in that moment is going to significantly impact the relationship that we have with our leader. It's also going to significantly impact the perception that we create about ourselves. And EQ helps to make sure that we're navigating all of that in the most effective way.
It's almost like you read my mind. I was flashing back before you even said the part about something in our organization happens we don't like. There was a time when I remember I was in management, and when you're in management, you start having entree to meetings and people that you didn't have before. So now you're included in meetings where you're talking about other people, strategy, and all those things, right? It's a different world. There's also can be a different level of politics that goes on, of positioning, of power play, things like that. And I remember this one situation where I had done a report on something, and I'm sitting in with the top executives, and I was there to present the findings of my report to them. And there was a key piece of something that I had talked about offline that an executive in that room brought up as his own idea, as if he had just discussed. It was like he basically took something I had told him and repurposed it as his own. That's how I saw it, and didn't acknowledge me at all in it, and actually used it almost against me. It was a very interesting play. That's my perception. Now, I'm open to the fact that maybe I saw that all wrong, but that's what in the moment, it doesn't matter whether I was right or wrong about it. But in that moment, I was emotionally triggered. I mean, I wanted to go pull out all the weapons I had, verbal weapons or whatever, and just really go after this guy and let them know that that was a complete BS and how dare he do that to me and this and that. Now, I didn't do that in the meeting, and I never followed up on it when I wasn't there for that long. So, but in a situation like that, so how would I know where I am in terms of my emotional intelligence via a situation like that? In other words, thinking of it through the EQ lens, what might I be in that moment? Something happens. I don't expect it. It's very upsetting. I've been working on my EQ. What are some of the thoughts that I'm going to have if I've been working on my EQ that are going to help me through that?
Very good question. I'd like to paint this from a variety of different perspectives. Ultimately, what you want to look at in a situation like that is the friction. What are the friction points or the pain points in the experience? If there are no friction points or pain points, which is another way of saying I'm totally okay with everything that happened and the way that I showed up, you don't need to think about EQ in that moment. But if there are certain pain points, then you could say, this is an opportunity for me to look at this from an EQ perspective or through an EQ lens. If I were to ask you, Matt, what were the issues that you had with that situation? What would you say? You could list them all.
You're asking me. I felt threatened and disrespected. It was a threat, and it was also a belittling experience. And I guess the third thing was someone that I wasn't sure about. It locked in a perspective about that person that they were, shall we say, to put it nicely, not to be trusted.
Yes. And so those are really significant friction points, because now there's a friction between you and this individual. You're not going to work and collaborate with them in the same way because you have this underlying feeling that, hey, I can't trust you because at any moment you may do something that is untrustworthy, like what happened in the meeting. Then we have your feeling that could also be applied to the organization at large. And so what happens when we don't clarify those emotions, we can start telling ourselves stories like, you see, the people at this organization are horrible people. People at this organization can't be trusted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can extrapolate or exaggerate our experience. I'm not saying that this is what you did. I'm saying this is the risk when we don't really take a moment to self-assess and understand what the friction points are. So that friction point of the relationship, it can then become an issue culturally, which can lead to disengagement. It can discourage you from a performance standpoint. Why am I going to give my all for an organization that doesn't acknowledge me for the things that I actually do? And so all of that then can then build up in time. And we may even have multiple situations that kind of contribute to what we're experiencing there emotionally. So the question becomes, well, what do I do? What's like the EQ response? And where we would start with a scenario like that is just by getting clear about the emotions that we felt, right? So I would just say, hey, Matt, well, what emotions did you feel in that moment? Most of us, when we're just starting the EQ journey, we struggle to label those emotions. So most people will respond to that by telling me what they thought, not what they felt, which means that there's a lack of emotional awareness. We're not really paying attention to our emotions, which means we're at the effect of them, but we're not able to manage them more directly or consciously. So we build out that emotional vocabulary. And maybe, Matt, you say, and you did say here, some of these, I felt disrespect. Maybe you felt angry, stressed, disappointed, right? Unnerved, etc. So we would really figure out what that profile is. And then we would ask, well, what were the thoughts and stories that you were telling yourself? And you may have told yourself that bastard stole my work. I'm keeping it PG, by the way. Bastard stole my work. It was probably worse than that, wasn't it?
That's the beginning of what I thought. I had a few other choice words, but I think that word was not inaccurate.
So he stole my work, right? He can't be trusted. I'm never sharing anything with anyone in this organization again. I'm not appreciated and I'm not seen. I'm undervalued here. There would be this whole host of thoughts. So we would just bring awareness to those thoughts. We would validate and understand your experience at the level of thinking and feeling. Then we would start to explore different emotional intelligence skills. That one that we just did is awareness. What actually happened with you internally? And we would look at things like potentially emotional expression and assertiveness. Is this an opportunity for you to have a feedback discussion and say, hey, John, I just want to get some clarity here. It appears to me like you presented my work as yours in the meeting, and I really didn't appreciate that. What happened there? And it could be that conversation that allows you to process that emotion and let it go. But if the emotion of frustration or anger or distrust or whatever it is, never gets acknowledged and addressed, it stays there. And it starts to inform our actions in an unpredictable way. And then on top of that, emotion is a part of our subconscious, which is another way of saying we're not aware of it. We don't even know that it's there. So all of a sudden, you have this passive aggressive attitude toward John and other people when you're collaborating. And it doesn't have anything to do with those other people. It just has everything to do with, in the past, you've been wrong and you are upset about that. So at any situation that reminds you of that scenario, you have this impulsive, unconscious reaction. And people say, oh, whoa, what's wrong with that person? And you don't really know that you're doing it. So it's important that we acknowledge, we build that emotional self-awareness. What am I feeling and why? And is there something that I am required to do to let go of this? Sometimes it's the feedback conversation. Other times it's asking, well, what was John's actual experience there? Was he aware of the fact that he did that? Was he misunderstanding something? There could have been a perfectly legitimate reason for what he did that had nothing to do with him wanting to actually steal your work. We have to understand that, because if there's a legitimate reason, it's just a mix-up of communication, and we can right the wrong and move on and maintain the relationship. So we also look at challenging assumptions that we're making about the situation. and how at times we jump to these conclusions about what people do and their intention without actually fact checking, which brings us to the next emotional intelligence skill, which is reality testing. Reality testing is about our ability to decipher the difference or find the difference between how we feel about something emotionally, which is on the inside, and what objectively actually happened externally, which is on the outside, which is amazing because it means a part of emotional intelligence is about our ability to not be emotional. So as you can see, when we start to walk through an actual example, we recognize that, hey, these are things that are happening all the time anyway. It's just a part of human nature, human interaction, human connection, building relationships, collaborating, working as partners. It's just what happens. But when you start to empower people with a language, with a model, they see through the matrix of all of that, and it empowers them to be able to show up in far more effective ways than in the past when they were reaching around a little bit blindly because they didn't have the models and language. So things are happening, but they can't really see them.
I'm just hearing a lot about developing the ability to be an observer of your own thoughts and actions and others. You can't observe their thought, but you can observe their action, and then you can inquire enough and be sensitive enough to figure out what they must have been, what they actually were thinking, and not necessarily what you assumed. I mean, I was just also having a flashback to high school reunions. Like, there's no better way to understand how faulty assumptions are than to go to a high school reunion after many years. Yeah, I went to one recently. It's been decades. I won't say how long, but it's been a while. And I just had the most wonderful time. And one of the reasons I did is because I went in with this really open kind of mindset and open spirit. And I didn't have any particular thing against anybody who was there. It was just when allowing myself to be open to seeing the human beings openly, far removed from that period of time. And then you hear these stories and you're, oh, this is what was going on in my life at the time. And you're going, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's what you were dealing with. And it starts putting in context how you saw their behavior then. And I was able with a few people to go, wow, and have even more compassion for them and even love. It opens up that part of the heart, right? That empathetic part of the heart when you go, wow, you were dealing with some serious stuff that you weren't talking about. And it puts your behavior in context. And so in a work scenario, same thing, right? I mean, my assumptions just need to always be on the table to be challenged. And it sounds like an EQ practice gives me a fighting chance to challenge those assumptions.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it goes beyond on the table to be challenged. It's even more fundamental than that. It's our ability to even see them. Do we even see the assumptions that we make about others? Because we have this innate habit as human beings to assume that everything that we say to ourselves in our mind is true. And we don't even know that we're doing it. You come home after a long day's work and your significant other asks you for a hand with something, and we start telling those stories, especially if it's a hard day, emotionally challenging. We say, they don't even care about the level of work that I put in. They have no regard for how busy and how challenging my day has been, when the reality is they have no idea how your day has been. They just need help washing a plate. I don't know. And that's literally it. And so I think for me, early on in my journey, when I started to do these self-awareness practices, one of the most significant realizations was just the amount of junk that I thought. Like, how much my thinking was actually like a trash bin. It was just crap. It just was a bunch of assumptions and negativity and things that are irrelevant and that don't help me or help anybody else. That was shocking to me, right? It's like, ah, my goodness. The large majority of what I think is totally irrelevant and unnecessary. And I challenge anybody listening to this, right? It's all of us. We are incessant thinkers. We are chronic thinkers. We think about everything. There's a voice in your head right now that's narrating your entire experience, saying whether it agrees, whether it disagrees. And if you're thinking to yourself, what voice is he talking about? That is the voice that just said that to even. It's can't really escape it.
Right. That's right.
We want to start by just noticing what that voice is saying. I often say to people, okay, look at it like this. I want you to imagine, okay, that voice in your mind became an actual person standing beside you, following you around all day, whispering in your ear. What kind of person would they be? Would they be a kind person, a courteous person, an encouraging person, a supportive person, a helpful person, a positive person? Or would they be a negative person, a condescending person, a disrespectful person? It's amazing. Most of us wouldn't be friends with that voice in our head if they were a person outside of us, because we say nasty things to ourselves, right? Why are you even trying? You'll never be able to make it happen. You'll never be able to make it work. You're not good enough to pull that idea off, right? All of that negative talk that we just soak up. We have to first recognize that, take control of the narrative and start to direct it consciously. We're telling ourselves the stories that actually enable our success and empower us. Now, I need to be careful here. We don't want to be disconnected from reality. We want to be able to be objective about what we're seeing, hence reality testing, right? We just want to make sure that the relationship that we have with ourselves, inside of ourselves, is healthy.
Yeah, I love that image of imagine that thought becomes a person.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of was I'm having a party and I'm like, oh, you showed up again. I didn't even invite you. And yet we do invite that. We invite it every time we don't challenge it and we let it go on and ruminate, which of course doesn't lead to better thinking. So that's really great. Okay. So in our remaining moments here, let's get even more practical for the person who's like a new manager and others, but particularly if you're a new manager and you're in the thick of it, you're realizing your relationships are changing. It's a different kind of stress. You're having second guessing about your own self. How do I motivate these people? How do I correct their behavior? How do I lead? And I had these big dreams, and it's a lot harder on the day-to-day than even I realized. So practically speaking, what are a couple or a few things that I could do right now that would actually make a difference in my EQ?
The first and most important thing is to develop this capacity for self-awareness, this ability to see yourself, to really know yourself. And I say start there, and I'll give you some practical strategies on how to do that. But I say start there because if you're not seeing yourself clearly and you're not conscious about yourself and your behaviors and your thoughts and your emotions, it means that there are a whole host of things that you're doing that you're not acutely aware of. So you're affecting relationships in ways that you can't even see. And that can be really detrimental. Sometimes it can work in your favor, but it can also be really detrimental. So you got to get a hold on that first. And it just starts with a basic self-reflection practice. So typically what I tell people is for a 30-day stretch, get a little journal and just monitor 2 to 3 emotional triggers for that day. Find 2 to 3 events that triggered you emotionally and do a really simple journal reflection and answer 2 simple questions. Number 1, what was the event that triggered you? Number 2, what were the emotions that you felt? And I say this because if you do this legitimately over a 30-day period, you're going to start to see the aspects of yourself that are automated that may be creating friction. Even if you don't change them, even if you just become aware of them, it will position you to be able to show up differently in those moments, or at least reflect on them. It's so deceptive because it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. It's like me saying, if you want to lose weight, just do a speed walk for 30 minutes a day. You're not walking too fast where you're losing your breath, but you're also not walking too slow that it's more of a walk. it's just a speed walk around the block or at the park for 30 minutes a day. It's like, is that really the answer? Well, if you did it, you would see huge benefits. And that would be literally if you changed nothing else. So first thing is develop a practice of self-awareness. Now, I should expand on that because it's not just self-awareness from the perspective of what am I doing wrong? What am I getting wrong? What's wrong with me? I need to fix me, which I think we do a lot in leadership development. It's also, well, what's right with me? What are my strengths? What are my skills? What are my innate talents and abilities? What are some of the things that I need to lean into that are my unique areas of excellence? It's amazing how many people I get into an EQ debrief with, which is a session where we debrief their EQ result. And I ask, what are your strengths? And they fumble through that, maybe sort of. And you got to look at that because everybody who I work with and anyone who's listening to this is successful in some way, shape. Everybody that I work with, everybody who's listening to this has skills or things that you do innately well. You got to know what those things are. You got to know what they are so that you can leverage them and get the most out of them and cultivate them and grow them and develop them, but also so that you can advocate for yourself to make sure that you're getting what you deserve, whether it's the role or the title or a pay increase or whatever it is. You need to know what you're good at and be able to articulate that. A phenomenal tool for that, by the way, is StrengthsFinder. It's an assessment that helps you identify your strength profile, and it gives you great language. So that's what I would say on the self-awareness side. Get to know yourself. Who are you? What are your challenges? What are your unique opportunities? What are your strengths? What are your talents? What are your abilities? What makes you unique? And by the way, remember, every single example of greatness that we have in history and in our lives today is a reflection of someone who has leaned into their natural area of expertise and greatness. I am never going to be the greatest accountant on the planet, ever. I could work hard and I can become decent at it, but that just ain't my strengths profile, right? I need enough of it to be able to run a business, but I'm not going to be the guy that's showing you all the number analysis and it just ain't me. But I can't be the guy who can have a great conversation with Matt Stone about emotional intelligence. And maybe I should do a whole lot more of that than financial statements. That's the power of self-awareness and understanding what your strengths are. And I can get better at this skill. I can invest in becoming a better speaker. I can invest in being able to deliver more powerful messages and presentations. And that's going to be my thing. Maybe you have many things. So that's all on the self-awareness side. Then we've got to look at the people. I would say as a starting point, just get to know the people who are on your team. In your first conversation with them, and if it's not the first and you're just starting out, that's fine. You can still do this now. Have a discussion that's not about work. Find out who they are. What matters to them? What drives them? Find out why they even wake up when the alarm clock goes off and show up. Why do they do that? Is it just about the money? I mean, that's fine, but you should know that. And that's really different than if it's also about career progression. Maybe they took on this role because they'd like to be able to transition to a different role in a different department. Maybe it's more than the money. Maybe they see this as a stepping stone to another career in the same department. Maybe they want to do what you do someday. And so the sooner that you can get a sense for why people are actually there, well, who they are first outside of work. And then number two, why are they even there? Why do they even show up? The sooner that you can start that conversation is the more that you'll set yourself up for success, because then you can career path them. You can leverage them to support you in certain ways because you know that they have certain interests and passions, etc. So I would say have that conversation to really get to know your people. And I'll give you a tool that's really helpful for this. I like to ask others to practice. It's called the 80-20 rule. And all you do is in your conversation, you focus on listening 80% of the time and only talking 20% of the time. And in that 20%, you want to focus on open-ended questions, paraphrasing statements, and clarifying questions. And if you can take that empathetic 80-20 stance in your interaction, you will be amazed at what people share with you. So those would be my top two things.
And they're joined by the theme of investigation. Investigate yourself and investigate others. Get to know yourself, get to know others. Keep pulling. And with that, you'll have so much a better foundation to build on, it sounds like, in terms of when you go to that next level of developing self-awareness and EQ, you'll come from a place of, yeah, I actually do know my values. I understand my strengths. One of the things that I've done over the years is when I feel a little bit lost, disconnected from my own identity, and it particularly around transitions, like major transitions where I'm probably afraid, I will ask people who really care about me and who are honest with me. I'll ask them to reflect back, like, what is it what's the biggest value that I bring to this relationship? Or what do you observe in me that you think is a strength? And I'm not doing it to massage my ego, or it's not an ego thing. It's literally just needing to connect. As you pointed out, knowing your strengths is so important. And that's really resonates with me, because we need to know what we're good at. And we need to know that in order so we don't over rely on that as well. So there's an under and over on that, so that we're right in alignment. We're in that zone with it, but we're also not over relying on that and assuming that our strengths are everything, because they're not. And so that has really helped me over the years, having people that really care about me. And I've said, what is it? And they'll come back and they'll say, well, this is how I would say, this is what I think you're really strong in. This is what you do for me. And oftentimes I will hear language that my own internal voice doesn't give me. And it gives it it fills it in somehow. I don't know if that resonates with you.
It does. I think that's so powerful. I think it's so powerful. And I think it speaks to the fact that sometimes we don't give ourselves the credit for what we can do well. And it could be really empowering to lean into relationships to help us to see those things. I think that's what great leaders do. They help us to see the greatness within ourselves and to actualize that potential. And oftentimes at the beginning of that journey, we didn't see it within ourselves, but they did. And I agree. I think that you can ask people for that feedback and that input. And if you're feeling especially courageous, ask for one of each. Ask them, what is one thing that you feel that I am just really good at, just exceptional at, something that I just do naturally off the cuff? And by the way, you'll be surprised by a lot of this, because our area of excellence oftentimes is our blind spot area. So because we do it so naturally and it comes so easily to us, we don't actually identify with the fact that we do it. So sometimes the answer to that question will actually catch us off guard. But if you're feeling especially courageous, I would say, take that one step further and ask, what's one thing that you feel that I could do differently? Or what's something that you've observed in me that you feel stifles my success, gets in the way of my success? That if I change would have a significant positive impact on my life, personally and professionally. And you can ask people on the professional side this, and you can ask people on the personal side this. So yes, it resonates tremendously. I love that. And I encourage people to be open with feedback. I think another thing that I would say for new managers, new leaders is really get comfortable with this idea of feedback. Get comfortable accepting it for yourself. Get comfortable giving it to others. And that's the fastest way to be able to accelerate growth. So if I were to add a third thing for people to do, it would be to become very intentional about feedback as soon as you can. Like, I work with leaders 10, 20, 30 years later in their careers who continue to struggle with delivering meaningful feedback. Because it's easy as a leader, unfortunately, maybe a little too easy, to avoid those feedback conversations. Many of us do it for years. So the sooner that you can develop an ability to be open, to be honest, to be candid with someone, and to be clear and to be direct, the better. And my sell for feedback would be, it's a life skill. So you look at it professionally and say, well, what's the ROI of being able to tell someone the straight truth about where they're at? What's the ROI of that professionally? Well, that person learns about themselves. They now have an opportunity to be able to grow and develop, become a better version of themselves. They can develop skills. Oh, you deepen the relationship and there's a deeper sense of trust. Not always, unfortunately, but most of the time for the right people that will happen. But what happens when you become a more candid and authentic person in your personal life? What does it mean to be able to deliver a tough message personally, right? To your partner, to your friends, to your family members. Like imagine being able to simply say the thing that you know needed to be said years ago, but that you've been maybe too afraid to say. And so that person suffers with the outcomes of whatever that behavior may be. What does it mean to be able to actually have that conversation? I know for me earlier on in my journey, at one point, I remember taking on a new team and the large majority of the team were underperforming. So the first 6 months, it was painful. It was so horrendous. The first 6 months, and this is right at the beginning of my leadership journey, the first 6 months was literally a string of disciplinary conversations and memos and notes. And it was excruciating because it was my first time at it. It was really difficult for me to say to people, if this doesn't change, your employment is in jeopardy. It was hard to just get those words out, but it was really character defining. It was exceptionally character defining, and it stretched me in this really interesting way that allowed me to tell people the truth. And so that thing that was really difficult for me to develop, and by the way, I'm still developing it. It's something that I still work on, sometimes even drop the ball on and look to improve today, but I've been able to significantly develop that skill. So in coaching sessions today, it's one thing that I believe people appreciate the most about me is my ability to just be candid and to tell them the truth, because for some strange reason in our society, we don't tell each other the truth, do we? We see it, we know it, we experience it, but we dance around it because we're afraid of hurting each other. So I think that changing our definition of what it means to deliver feedback and recognizing that it's not about hurting, it's about helping, is one of the most significant things that you can do at the very beginning of your leadership journey. Lead into that discomfort.
Fantastic. Get to know myself, get to know my people, and invest in feedback skills. And of course, that's been the focus of what I've been doing for a long time now, is mastering the heart or the art and the science of a feedback conversation, because it is the thing that makes all of this work in terms of both giving and receiving and exchanging, and thinking of it as a win, a mutually rewarding experience, as hard as it may be. And it's amazing how much people respect you when you tell them the truth, even if they're angry in the moment.
Yeah.
You find out, oh, okay, that's just a moment.
Yeah. And it goes both ways.
But if you do it the right way, then people tend to come
That's
around. Right. Jamelle, this has been absolutely fantastic. I want to ask you 2 last questions. And one is, what is exciting you right now in your life, in your career? What are you looking forward to in the coming months?
Well, I think the first thing on the personal side is I recently got engaged. And so that is very exciting to an incredible human being who has just lit up my life in so many different ways. And it's amazing because prior to that engagement, I believed that I was an emotional intelligence master. But now I realize I'm an emotional intelligence grasshopper. So I'm starting all over again.
You know what? You mentioned it before. You didn't use this word. It's a practice. It's like a lifelong practice.
Yeah.
And now you're leveling up to that next level of commitment and intimacy. And yeah, I'm sure your EQ, your personal EQ journey, we'll have to have another episode
that's a whole
and talk
episode.
about what
That's
you've
a whole
learned in
series.
that.
That's a podcast series right there. And so it is a lifelong journey, and there are always going to be new challenges that show you something new about yourself, hence the word self-awareness. So that's been super fulfilling and super valuable to me and just amazing in every way. That's exciting on the personal side. I think on the professional side, the most exciting thing is this new product that I've developed called EQ Squared. And this is essentially, think Facebook, Instagram, think any social media, but for emotional intelligence development. There's video content, there's community space to engage and to like each other's comments. There are daily EQ challenges where you learn about an EQ concept, you go out there and apply it, come back to the community section. This has been exceptional for me because it provides a unique opportunity to scale the emotional intelligence learning experience. And so we recently did two cohorts, one of 100 people at an organization and another of 200 people at an organization. And to see that many people engaging in this app, watching content, going out there, practicing EQ strategies, coming back, sharing, being open, vulnerable with each other has been absolutely amazing and fulfilling for me. So I think that on the professional side, that's the most exciting thing that I have happening right now. But all aspects of what I do are exciting. Just the opportunity to be able to meet with someone and support them in becoming their best version, that excites me. Having this conversation right now with you, my dear friend, Matt, excites me. So there's a lot that's going on my side.
Well, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and if you want to learn more about Jamelle and see what he does in his business, he's a keynote speaker. If you want him to come and speak at your organization, he's a phenomenal choice and based in Toronto, right? In Canada. Yep. And able to travel anywhere. And also great with teams and working with executives as well. So a great resource for EQ development. And I'll post that information in the comments for people to get in contact with you. Jamelle, thank you so much. Again, we'll have to come back in a little bit and check in on how everything's going.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got value out of this conversation. And if you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button on whatever channel you're listening and join me at our Substack channel, mattstone.substack.com. That's mattstone.substack.com. Subscribe there as well for more bonus material and other things of value. And of course, remember, sharing is caring. So please share this show with a friend. Until next time.